Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss and Kristen West, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. It's Kristen West, and welcome to What Women Want Talk Radio. Thank you so much for joining our show tonight, The Truth of You and Me. And our beloved Judy Goss is traveling today. And what's she up to? Well, of course, she is getting us ready for our What Women Want conference coming up this October. And speaking of What Women Want Talk Radio has reached way over 1 million downloads since we first hit the airwaves. Between latalkradio.com's archives, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and all over social media, you can find us everywhere. So listen to those replays, and we are taking sponsors for our show for the next few months. And if you contact us before September 1st, we're going to throw in a bonus sponsorship with our National Women's Conference, which I will be talking about shortly. So email us for a complete deck through our website, whatwomenwantradio.com. Now, Judy is the founder of our show and What Women Want Networking. Her background originally comes from high fashion modeling with Ford New York, and after that she was a magazine editor and then an author with St. Martin's Press, which eventually led her to hosting and reporting regularly for Better TV, City Buzz, and all the TV networks across the country. And she's also now hosting a show called Behind the Gates, which is a luxury real estate show airing on AWE. She's also the mom of 2 adorable twin teenagers and an entrepreneur. And she founded the company What Women Want Networking 7 years ago. Now, we're hosting our second National Women's Conference in October 19th through 21st at the Hyatt Regency in Atlanta. And the theme is Go Big, because we're not going home. And of course, I'm Kristen West, and I'm an actress, a TV, a radio host, and a movie producer. And you can currently see me on the awards-nominated show Horror Talk with Kristen West, the entertainment tonight for the horror genre fan community, and the award-winning short film The Spirit Room, and also The Lich, now out on VOD. So, if you want to meet me in person, or my co-host Judy, or maybe Amy Newmark, CEO of Chicken Soup for the Soul, she's opening our keynote for the conference. She's our opening keynote speaker. She will also be attending the rest of the weekend. So you need to join us in Atlanta in October. We are already filling the room, and we currently have only a few VIP tickets left. And filling the room with incredible women. It's where the personal meets the professional development. People like Amy who are inspiring and wise beyond words. So go to whatwomenwantconf.com and use the code GOBIGDISCOUNT, all caps, for $100 off before the prices go up again on September 1st. They start at $225 a ticket with the discount for 3 days of fun, learning, new friendships, and so much more. And we already have women from 12 states registered so far this year. We have world-class speakers who are flying in from all over the country, including our closing keynote from Boston, Cecilia Lenk, CEO of Value Setters, who has I underestimated that, 200,000 angel investors in her network. 200,000 angel investors. The new Tony Robbins, who is a motivational mindset expert, David Bear. Inc. magazine called him a leading expert on mindset, and so many more. So the value of this conference is way beyond a couple of $100. These tickets are going fast, I'm excited to say. So make sure you grab your spot. Go to whatwomenwantconf.com and use the coupon code GOBIGDISCOUNT for $100 off before September the 1st. So it's amazing atmosphere, by the way, at the conference. And Kelly McNelis was a huge part of creating that wonderful atmosphere at the conference last year. And one of Kelly's great gifts is helping women to find their truth. And it's said that the truth will set you free. And we're going to discuss that tonight with Kelly. She's been touring the country after her best-selling book, Your Messy Brilliance, came out, and is now rolling out her Truthteller Tour, creating a platform for women to tell their truths, which can certainly be messy, but always brilliant. Welcome back, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Kristen. I'm so excited to be here. I love you guys. You're the best.
Thank you, Kelly. And, Kelly, some of the most powerful moments of the What Women Want conference last year came during your seminar, and just the space that you created for women to share their truths. And so I know that so many women really benefited from that, and I'm glad to have you on tonight to discuss that. So, Kelly, I have to ask you, how did you get so invested in truth-telling?
Well, that's such a great question. And, I think all of us can relate to wanting to tell the truth. From when we're little, our parents tell us, tell the truth. You're supposed to tell the truth. And then as we get older, we start hiding, and we learn family values that that's not appropriate as women or as little girls, right? We learn when we're very young, don't do that. It's not appropriate. And don't say that, or we're keeping that in our family. I mean, you've heard all of those statements. And I really believe that we are brought up as Western women, especially in a culture where we're trying to look good, we're trying to keep it all together. And, to our credit, we do that very well. But I know from my life personally, and from a lot of women that has shared on my website, Women for One, they felt like they've lost themselves by trying to put on the good mask and the good face, the good wife, the good sister, the good, worker, the good mother. I mean, it's just so challenging to stay connected to our own truth. And so I decided that I wanted to learn a little bit more about it, about speaking my truth, because, we do what we need to learn, right, Kristen?
Absolutely. And it brings up that nursery rhyme, little girls are made of sugar and spice and everything nice. But, you have too much sugar in your life, it'll kill you. You got to have some balance. Yeah. It was interesting, Kelly, because I had this situation the other day where someone really pushed a boundary with me. And most of the time I am extremely tactful, even you would say cautious. And I had been through so much lately that my sort of bank of tact my trough of tact was just empty. I had no more. And I let it loose on someone that wasn't expecting it. And I surprised myself even. And I think women, they build up this burden of nicety and niceness and politeness just to get along with other people. But I think you're absolutely right in your observation that we lose ourselves sometimes, and I would even say our boundaries, all for getting along with other people.
Yeah, we're taught as women to get along. Just make it okay. We're nurturers. The feminine is caretaking. And there's some really incredible qualities to that. But when we start swinging to the other side, we have to really keep ourselves in check. And, as me, I'm turning 50 next month, I'm looking at myself going, okay, what do I want in my life? I'm over half my life now. And that's what the 50 does to you, I think.
Well,
and so I want to spend my time wisely and keep good company. And most importantly, keep good company with myself and be true to, that great philosopher, be true to oneself. Like, we really need, as women, when you abandon yourself, it. Like, in the moment, you're like, oh, I just did that. Where you didn't speak your truth, or you didn't answer honestly because you were trying to caretake someone else, or you didn't know how to say it, right? So it's such an incredible topic for women to speak the truth, share their experiences so they can feel more connected and less alone.
It's true. And I think one of the biggest problems that women have, and I know I have it, is that we're because we're bending and contorting and trying to get along, a lot of women are not in touch with their anger. Women will break down in tears and they'll cry, and that'll be interpreted as sadness, but sometimes a woman who's sobbing is actually fighting mad, but has never been given the space or the permission to show anger the way maybe is more socially acceptable for a man. Do you find that when you're working with women?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And, I love you brought that up, because why I like that is because I've really gotten in touch with my anger these past probably 5 to 10 years. My husband doesn't like it as much, but he always says to me, you know what, at least I know where I stand with you, right? Because I'm very direct, and that puts some people off, and I'm owning that. Sometimes the directness is intimidating, and I don't mean for it to be, but I've gotten in touch with that place in myself that I can be angry with certain things, because anger is just an emotion. It's like fuel, right? If you use it and you have an awareness of why you're angry, you can learn so much from it. And I also think when we aren't giving ourselves permission to feel the emotion of anger or rage and always collapsing into that sadness, that we're stuffing it inside our bodies.
Right.
And there's been a lot of studies that talk about how you get very ill from that. And I believe that.
I'm glad that you brought up people turning their anger in on themselves, and it's turning it on their bodies, turning it in on themselves, is that you have these thoughts. I hate that I do this. I hate myself. I hate that I do that. And if they accumulate so much, you can really create problems for yourself. And I have to tell you, Kelly, in the anger department, I've had some stuff I've been dealing with, and I just went to the dollar store and started buying plates and little ceramic things. And then when things just get to be too much, I close the door, I make sure the cat's not in the room, and I start throwing shit. Because that's the only way.
That's wonderful, because I use a bat on a bed
you.
when I get angry.
Good for you. I bet that's great. I bet you have great arms.
Well, no, you hit the bed and you move your energy out of your body. It was taught to me by one of my greatest teachers, Alima, and we learned that in the school that I was in, to really just get that out, because you feel so good after.
It's kind of like I tell a lot of people don't appreciate this, but it's kind of like an exorcism in a way. It's just like you go full on Linda Blair on yourself. And then it's gone. You do. And then it's gone. It's like done. So I have to ask you, what is a Truthteller Tour? What does it involve?
Well, I'm the founder of Women for One, which, to give the community context, I've been on the show several times, but Women for One was founded by me 8 years ago because I just wanted to write at first and really connect with other women. And then about a year into it, I really followed my intuition and decided to have women share their stories and their truth from all over the world. And as soon as I created that container, I was serving Women for One, and now we have stories from over 60 countries, women sharing from all over the world experiences like about their divorce, about death, about illness, about celebration, about entrepreneurship. I mean, it could be any story that you've been through and that we professionally edit. They write it and we edit it. So I'm not looking for writers. I'm looking for women that want to share and connect. So I did that. And then as the Me Too movement and the Time's Up campaign came along, I thought, well, we're already doing this. Women are sharing their truth on my site. And we have this incredible community where I've created these courses for women on how to find your voice and how to dive into your story. And I decided last year to try it with the spoken word, because I feel like even though, I mean, I'm an incest survivor, Kristen, and I am still working it around my sexual abuse and how it's impacted my life. But I find that women have so much more to share in the good, the bad, and the ugly with one another. And I think it was a great avenue in the media to move into that more. But I want women to come on this tour in different cities and share their stories and experiences from the spoken word so that other women can witness them, feel connected, and feel empowered to do the same thing.
I'm glad that you brought up the spoken word, because I think there's a sort of a cognitive dissonance going on. is that we're very accustomed to writing. We've been writing for thousands of years. But there's a different energy, and I know this being an actress, when you speak something and it's coming out your throat, coming from your heart and out your throat, versus something that you're writing, which is usually coming, from your head space, possibly from your heart space through your hand. And there's a physical difference, but there's also sort of I would argue, a psycho-spiritual difference as well. Why do you feel that speaking is important as opposed to writing?
Well, Kristen, think about it. For thousands and thousands of years, the spoken word was how we came together as communities. I mean, even in the African tribes, everywhere around the world, we didn't, at first we didn't have pens to write.
True.
We didn't have a language except a spoken language, right? Mm-hmm. So we've been doing this around the campfire for thousands of years. And then when writing came along and language and appropriateness, it kind of shifted into a different space. So it's almost like we're kind of coming back around, which I believe that's what we do in our lives, right? We come back around. We do that with generations as well. And moving into that spoken word, because I also just a couple weeks ago spoke at Heather Ashamara. She had a warrior goddess. She's one of my heroes, my sheroes, at her warrior goddess weekend. And I spoke about the voice and the throat chakra and the power of your voice and sharing your story. And we did all these exercises around really opening our voices, kind of like you would probably do as an actress.
Right.
And getting it out there and looking at your story and speaking your story and your truth to a partner. We do these partner exercises, and it's just transformational in a different way. It's from your body. Like you said, it's from your heart, but it's from your body. You embody the story instead of just writing it from your head.
I love how you brought up the role of the body, because a lot of people don't realize is that your voice is not just living in your throat. There's a certain amount of voice behind your eyes. There's there's voice in your stomach, and as women, there's a lot of voice actually in your sacral chakra, in your uterine area. There is tons of voice in your body, and of course, voice is vibration. That's what the voice is. It's the vibration, and it works on a so much more subtle level. And some people, especially if they tend to trip up in their speech, or they kind of clam up when they're speaking, they really have to own all of that voice, and the voice can get traumatized, especially if it's inhibited too much. Have you found on your Truthteller tours that some women are maybe have stage fright or are nervous speaking in front of others, and then they leave and they're and then you can't get them to stop talking? How does that work?
I actually did find that, and literally I would say, I did the stories for so many years, and we still accept stories at Women for One. And then we did Boulder Truthteller Tour at Boulder, Colorado in February, and it was transformational for me because not only did women have the courage to submit a story and speak to their own community about something they had endured. And they also walked away feeling so empowered. And what was really cool, though, is there was a woman there who actually I had 3 women that have never spoken in front of an audience and 3 women that were speakers, because I wanted the community in Boulder wanted to hear from them as well. And they spoke about different things than they had ever subjects that they ever spoken about in their lives. And one woman spoke about being in the in-between. And because she called me 2 days before and said, I don't think I can do this. I'm a speaker, but I'm not ready to share this. And I said, well, why don't you speak about that? And it was so beautiful, Kristen, because she talked about how we have to honor where we are in our truth, in our storytelling, right? Mm-hmm. And if we're not ready to speak about something, we shouldn't go there. Because we're honoring and giving ourselves power and taking our power back and not feeling like, I'm going to put it out there and expose myself to everyone. So everybody's at a different stage in their storytelling. Some people want to go on Women for One and read the stories. Some women want to go on there and go, oh, maybe I'll take a course or do a freebie, or maybe I'll submit a story. Then there's these bold women that are ready to speak or read their story out loud. And the energy that you get back from a community of women that sits there and holds witness to you of what you've been through. I mean, literally, when I talk about it, it just makes me want to cry, because the women that spoke at the last Truthteller Tour were so beautiful, and they were buzzing, and they had their families there. And one of the greatest things that ever happened was one of the women spoke about overcoming an eating disorder. Her whole life she had an eating disorder, and she went into treatment, and her kids knew about it. And she spoke about how difficult it was and how it was the most courageous thing she ever did. And her 16-year-old daughter stood up after she spoke and said, "You are my hero and my inspiration for my life."
That's amazing.
And it was just like, I mean, it makes me cry. Like when I talk about it, you had to be there to see it. But I mean, the connections and the heart that you feel when people speak their truth and have that courage for themselves and for others is incredible.
I guess it's the idea of being in that room, because I mean, there are things like Post Secret and anonymous message boards where you can kind of dump your secret or tell your story in an anonymous way. But I would imagine that being in the room would be a different experience entirely. Now, I have to ask you, because I think of bands going on tour. I think of Broadway shows going on tour. So why did you decide to tour this Truth Teller experience instead of doing a conference or a summit in one place?
Thank you for asking. There's a couple reasons. One is every community in this country, in this continent, in this world is unique. And I didn't want to just, I mean, God bless Judy. I love the national conference. It's wonderful. But that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to take this tour and allow it to take on its own form inside communities like a national conference, inside small communities. I have a woman in Iowa that wants to host one, and she was so sweet. She emailed us and said she could get this venue that will hold 1,100 people, and she's lived there for 40 years, and she thinks she can get 1,100 people. I'm like, are you kidding? And she said, no, it's a little tiny farming town, right?
Wow.
So every community is so unique and different. And that's why we're creating Truthteller Tour ambassadors, where we're doing a call for those ambassadors to come to us and say, hey, I want to do this, and I want to raise sponsorship from local businesses, and I want to highlight women in their power in my community, whether it's a little tiny town in the South or in Iowa to a big city like Seattle, like we're planning on doing. It's so powerful to see the communities really rally around the women and empower them to move forward in their lives by speaking their truth.
It's interesting because I like that point you brought up, that the community has a certain local flair, and that women that may be very close to each other physically may not necessarily be close to each other emotionally. And it seems like it would be a great way for women to bond who may not otherwise really connect.
I love that point. I got to write that down so I tell people that when I'm talking about this, because that's so true. I mean, because I have all my dear friends, I have a lot of children, you know that, right? I have 6, I have 3 of my own and 3 stepchildren, and I've raised them in this community. And I get together with lots of women, women in sports, women in school, for fundraisers. But do we really get that connection or that contact to go, how are you doing today? Everybody says, I'm great. How are you? Well, you know what? No, I've had a crappy day. And this is what happened last night. And it's so incredible to have that truth telling within these sisterhood communities.
It's interesting because I think about the county I grew up in. There are 50,000 people in that county. And it's certainly not possible that all 50,000 of those women have met. But I'm sure many of them would share similar frustrations and concerns and issues. So that's a very interesting idea that you have. Now, I have to ask, you chose to focus particularly on women instead of mixed gender groups. did you feel like women really needed the unique space with some of the things that they would be voicing in the privacy, or why did you choose not to make mixed gender groups?
Well, I mean, men are very much welcome to attend these Truthteller tours, and we have Truth-tellers that are men on our site.
Okay.
But our demographic is women, and really, I think, as you can see in our world right now, the women are uprising. They're rising up, right? They're discovering their voices in a very different way, individually and collectively. And I think, that's what I do with Women for One in my community. I do believe that men need to find the same thing. And there's lots of incredible men, including my husband and my best guy friend and my publisher, that are supporting the feminine in such a powerful way. And we need to include them in these conversations. We need to include them in these communities, and not only include them, but encourage them to support women and their voices as well.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think one of the things is that there is a lot of anger towards men. We talk about toxic masculinity. It's one of the sort of the ideas of the zeitgeist, and it's there, and it's a thing. Mansplaining is a thing. Those are all things. Sexual harassment is a problem. It's a thing. But I think one of the things is that men feel, when I talk to men, because I work with a lot of men, the entertainment industry is still a male-dominated profession, is that there are men who are allies, that are self-identified as feminists, that are, to use a millennial term, they're woke and they're lit. They're ready to help, but they don't quite feel welcome, or they feel like they're going to say something wrong or do something wrong or step on someone's toes if they're not more proactive. So do you find that the men that are coming to this, what happens with them? Are they shocked about what they hear? Are they, what's going on with the men that attend these events?
My husband, when he met me, was kind of shocked at how open and direct and honest I was. But that's just because that's just who I am. And still to this day, he's like, wow, I never surrounded myself with women that shared so much. So I think that's just me and my friends and just the culture that I've chosen to surround myself with. I would say a couple of things around what you said. One, about men in general. There are no men in general. I think there's human beings, right? So
right.
I feel like the new feminine for me, and for a lot of women these days, is a blend of the feminine and masculine. In my book, I talk about that. In Your Messy Brilliance, I have 7 tools. Half of them are feminine, half of them are very direct and masculine. And I think that integration of the feminine and masculine is really coming into the millennials, definitely. And it's not an issue for them as much. But men my age, come and support the women in their lives, the daughters, the sisters, the wives, right, and the friends. And they are a little surprised sometimes, but they're also, they're also feeling human beings that are awakening as well. What does that mean, lit and woke up, right? Like, what does that really mean? We need to ask ourselves that, because I will say, I always thought when I divorced my first husband, I've only had 2. I call him my current husband, my husband now. When I divorced him, I was like, I want to find a spiritually awake man. And that was 17 years ago. I was like, I'm going to find someone that's forward thinking and all this. And then I ended up with a very loving, powerful man that was not anything like my idealized image in my head. He has qualities of loyalty and love and support and humor and groundedness, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't like the most awake spiritual man. He actually is just a good human being.
You mean he wasn't doing yoga?
My belief system around men, that way.
Uh-huh. So you mean your husband wasn't doing yoga and levitating and eating granola and making the kombucha for you?
No, but you know what? I did date somebody in between my husband and him, and I got that out of my system and went, oh my gosh, you're just as unconscious as all the other men. Okay, so you gotta play it like it is, and look for somebody that's a good match for you.
You got to play it like it is.
Being.
I like that. So how is the truth teller experience different from talk therapy or group therapy? How is that any different from talk therapy or group therapy?
Well, it's not intended to be therapy. We're not therapists at Women for One. And it hits women at all different stages. You know, some women get up, like in Boulder, one woman got up and read her story, and she cried through the whole story. And the people were crying, and it was all heart in the room. Another woman got up and spoke her story and had processed a little more further, like around her emotions around it, but could really articulate what her experience and lessons were. So I'm really, you know, it's not really about group therapy or individual therapy. It's about getting an awareness of the experience that you had so that you can gain lessons, feel connected to others, and then move forward in your life to make your own life happen instead of letting life happen to you. Because I felt like my life is happening to me. I don't know if any of the women out there can connect, but it's like, you know how you're just I mean, today, I had one of those days today where I was like, okay, 10 o'clock I have this, 11 o'clock. I mean, that's what a mom or a woman has in her life, right? And so it's so nice to go, wait a minute, I have control. I have choice. I just need to get an awareness of why I'm behaving this way and move forward in my life on my terms. That's the difference.
I think you did a really good job of sort of encapsulating some of the franticness and that sort of the hamster on a wheel feeling that we get where we are so busy and feeling so obligated and we have to do things in a certain time period that we just totally divorce ourselves from it. First of all, is this healthy? Second of all, is this sustainable? Third of all, what do I really want? Because you feel like there's all these external obligations from, well, I'm not a good mom if I don't do this. I'm not a good wife if I don't do this. I'm not healthy if I don't do this. And we tend to have all of these expectations sort of laid on us that can make us frantic, and we're just, and we just sort of fritter away time and energy meeting these demands that are just really hard to meet, and they get more and more difficult for women to meet. Now, not all of these stories are sad, though, right? You actually have some funny stories that come out of these.
There are some fun stories. I mean, successful entrepreneurs, it's so cool to hear those stories where a woman gets an idea and a spark, and then she creates a business plan, right? And she talks about how she was relentless in moving forward and made millions of dollars, or someone that just wrote about got very clear about what she wanted in a partner and manifested that in her life in the way of really getting clear about what she wanted. I mean, after all, it is about what women want, right?
Right.
We have to get clear about what we want, or we're never going to be able to manifest it, create it, or choose it.
I like this idea of being clear, because what it alludes to for me is that the communication with others and with yourself so often is completely unintentional. It's just, okay, I'm communicating to give you information, or I'm communicating to get you to go away, or I'm communicating to just, it's just sort of instrumental. But there's a sort of a switch, I believe, that flips, and I'm sure you've seen this too, when people communicate intentionally and with clarity, like you said, that it's totally different from like just girl talk or shooting the shit with
verbal
your friends.
or verbal vomit, right? That's
verbal
my favorite
vomit.
word. Verbal vomit. Yeah, there's this great anecdote. So when I was in therapy with my first husband and thinking that I was this incredible communicator, I went to therapy with him. We were trying to work it out. Mm-hmm. And my therapist said to me, and he would never talk. So I complain all the time about how he'd shut down because, a typical man would just sit there and the woman would just, and I just had so much judgment on him for being quiet and shutting down. And she said to me something that always stuck with me. She's like, I'd like to suggest, Kelly, that Jeremy is a better communicator than you are. And I was like, oh, what? Me? The great communicator? My ego came up, I was like,
right.
What? And then she said, you verbally vomit instead of really going inside yourself, getting some clarity about what it is that you're feeling, what it is that you want to say. So I was just storytelling. I wasn't truth telling. I was storytelling. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that, where you hear someone, they're like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this. And then someone else is like, well, when this happened, this is how it impacted me. And I thought it's a totally different experience for yourself and for others when you truth tell versus when you story tell.
I like that distinction. I've never really thought about it much, but now that you bring the point up, it's true. You can hear, it's a difference in cadence. It's a difference in emotional investment. It's a difference in, it's hard to describe the difference, but you can certainly hear it. And
you can feel it.
Right. And you can feel it.
Women can feel it. It's a kinesthetic feeling when you're sitting there and all of a sudden you're checking out thinking, okay, what am I going to make for dinner tonight? Or what, it's just, and then she did this and then I did this. And then instead of someone's grabbing you and saying, I want you to bear witness to what I'm saying right now. It's a very different feeling.
Do you find sometimes that women have in the Truthteller Tour and the events that you host, do you find some women have a difficult time transitioning from story mode to truth-telling mode?
Yes, and I think the reason why is because we were all brought up on shame and getting it right. Mm-hmm. And if all you're doing is storytelling, it's great because at least you're starting to speak, right? It's awesome. Like, don't judge yourself for it. That's where you are, right? We all have our challenges. And a lot of times I'll still storytell and then I have an awareness that I'm doing it now. I'm like, oh, that must be hard for me to really, really go into my feelings about. And that's where I go with it. I go, oh, I'm storytelling. Okay, well, I'll just take myself out for an ice cream cone and, be okay with it instead of judging myself. Because then when we judge ourselves, we start spiraling right into judgment, and then we go into shame, and then we shut our voice down, and then we shut our power down.
Mm-hmm. Shame is such a big thing, and a lot of people really don't deal with their shame. And if it's not something that's managed, it's kind of like dying of 1,000 paper cuts and just bleeding out. I mean, it's one of those things that I didn't really realize for myself was an issue until about 2 or 3 years ago, is how much shame I had over many things. And a lot of the things that I personally had shame about, I really didn't have a lot of control over. And a lot of women suffer from that. So how do you encourage women, or what kind of tools do you have for women to get them in a place where their shame is more manageable? Is it just the act of truth telling, or is there something else? Is there another component that has to come in?
Well, I think, there's because shame is such a huge topic, and there's so many ways you can look at it. My personal take on shame is really, the tools in my book, because I have a lot of shame. I was sexually abused by my father, and I have shame around my sexuality. I've got body shame, right? I've got Catholic guilt because I was raised Catholic. It's like shame is everywhere for a lot of us, and it's in our society and running rampant. So what I decided to do was download my own process into the book, Your Messy Brilliance. And part of that is that life is messy, but you can find your brilliance through that mess. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to stop judging yourself. You got to get really curious about why you're doing certain things, like being ashamed of something. Then you've got to get an awareness of the story you tell yourself around it. And I just move people, and in my book, I move the reader through the tools to be able to move into empowered choice and manifesting what they want from that shame. You can alchemize it, kind of like anger we were talking about before. It's the same thing. You could take the shame and gain wisdom and lessons through it and alchemize it into making a powerful choice in your life. After you get clarity around it, you get more confidence, and you can make a choice.
I like that idea of alchemizing shame because it's such a great raw material of the psyche. And, and I love the analogy of alchemizing and alchemy because, of course, alchemy was turning back in the day. In the 1300s, they decided to turn base metal lead into gold, and these people would literally cook at a stove and they would try and turn lead into gold. Now, we know that the science of that does not work. But it's a stepwise process. Alchemy is a process of steps. I forget how many steps it is, but I think it's like 7 steps. Or there's a process by which you move through that, getting the lead to turn to gold. Now, like I said, we know the science doesn't work, but what it has become, that idea of alchemy and alchemization, is that anything that is base, not valuable, dross, junk, if you process it in a certain way, I'll even use the word shit, you can process your shit and you can turn your shit to gold. And I think that can be deeply empowering for people. What do you find with women when they're introduced to that process? What changes in them?
Well, the first thing is, a lot of women get shocked by it. When I do my workshops about messy brilliance and your messiness, I'm like, when you hear the word messy or muck or gunk or shit, like you said, right? What do you think of? Especially messiness. I'm like, well, I think about my messy hair and my messy purse and my messy house, and it's like all external. I know I feel messy inside. Like, I don't have the perfect body, and I sometimes, like today, I just ran out of the house. I looked messy. I was like, one of those crazy hamster wheel days. And I think the first thing it does is it shocks them. Like, you can find your brilliance, your genius, and your truth all through your messiness, all through that muck. In fact, that's the only way, is through it. Mm-hmm. You've got to wade through the muck and shit of your life and your experiences from the past to find and polish that beautiful gem that's brilliant, that is you. And that's what I'm trying to take women to, because that's all there is. I mean, we're here. We should be honoring ourselves, right? We should be being true to oneself, that we talked about at the very beginning, instead of having all this shame and hiding and secret keeping and trying to look good, because we just lose ourselves more and more when we do that, instead of moving into our power and finding our passion and joy in life.
I love that you liken it to a gym, because you were kind of taking the thoughts out of my head and verbalizing. When I can tell you is that when you look at a raw diamond, it doesn't look like much of anything. It's certainly not pretty. And I remember one of the most powerful experiences of my life was I happened upon this 40-pound piece of raw chrysocolla. A chrysocolla is kind of like turquoise. I mean, this thing was the size of a watermelon. But I didn't know it was chrysocolla because until I took the bedrock, the first layer of rock off of it with a hammer. I hammered that sucker for the better part of an hour. Sparks were flying off my hammer. I was hammering so hard. The only indication that I had that rock was anything was that it had little rust stains on it from little holes in this 40-pound watermelon-sized rock. Like the rock itself had bled over time. And sometimes you don't know what you really have until you give it a shape and you give it a form instead of just letting it be. And I think that idea of the gem is a really important one, because a lot of women, I think, can relate to that, is that you really have to cut and polish and shine up what could be, really dusty and dirty and not fun to look at otherwise.
I completely agree. I love all your visual images. And I also think, we have all these, 30 days to losing 30 pounds or 30 days to, empowering yourself through your life. Well, I have a 30 days to your Messy Brilliance, and it's almost like the uncleanse, right? It's like, accept yourself where you are. Let's practice accepting who we are first, instead of constantly trying to be someone else, get it right, shove our tiny parts, away that we're embarrassed or ashamed of. Let's bring the story to light. Let's bring it out there, because it's really going to it's just food for thought. It's beautiful. And I just wish all women would see their beauty. And I think in the workshops I do, that's what they see. We do these exercises where we just allow ourselves to dance and be free and take our bras off if we want. Literally, I know it sounds so cliche, but it's so true. It's just do something and push your edge and get a little messy. Just do the act. And then women feel safe enough to share. And then they move forward a little baby step at a time. Because it's all about percentages and baby steps. It's not just taking the big dive. It's about the baby steps in your life. And everybody talks about it, but I completely agree with that.
I love that. And I think we don't acknowledge the baby steps enough, because sometimes that baby step is the thing. And in my life, I love this analogy. For me, I feel like I'm constantly taking a battering ram to a brick wall. And one day, there's going to be a very tiny crack. And one day I will hit that crack just hard enough and that whole wall will go down. And that's what I tell myself sometimes when I feel like my efforts are for naught. And, Kelly, what you're doing is really helping people and giving them a space. And I'm sure there are women that want to get involved with the Truthteller Tour. So how can they find out more, like becoming an ambassador? And what does all of that entail? And where are you going? Tell me all about it.
Well, there are so many ways to get involved with our Truthteller Tour. You can go to our site. We have this little hamburger thing that comes out on our site that says Truthteller Tour. You can click on it. You can watch the promo video. You can watch the women that have shared in Boulder. And you can really get a feeling for what one of these events would be like in your community. And if you're interested or so moved, there's a place where you can, there's buttons on the page that says speak at one, attend one, right? Create one. Like it's just, you can be a Truthteller Tour ambassador. We can work with you, and you can apply to create one of these tours in your community so that women can share their truth and their voice. Or you can host one inside a conference or a business. We're also exploring universities. We have our first university at Mississippi State University, where we're doing a Truthteller Tour inside there in March. Because March is a big month for us because it's Women's History Month. So we're really excited about doing that and really kicking off the year of Truthteller Tours in March. And we're planning a lot of them within the next 3 years. I'm very excited about them. So you can just go to my site, womenforone.com/Truthteller Tour, and check it out. And I'd love to see you at one of these.
And does this happen over the course of one day, or is it several days?
You know what? That's the beauty of this. I mean, we do encourage women to have one main event, but in Seattle, we're doing a conference, like a mini conference. It's just workshops for a day. Mm-hmm. And then in the evening, we are, in the evening, we're doing the big tour with several hundred women. So we're going to have a small group of women diving into their voice and sharing their story, but yet in the evening, we're going to do the tour. But in small towns, it can be like a 7 to 9 evening where women are sharing their stories and speaking up. Or you could donate the money that you raise, part of it, to a fundraiser for women in your community. So there's lots of ways to get involved, Kristen, and I just am excited because I'm feeling the energy of it at Women for One right now, and I can't wait for others to get involved and hear about it.
And quickly, Kelly, what about Atlanta coming up? Because you're a stop on your Truthteller Tour is the What Women Want conference. So what can our ladies coming to our conference in Atlanta expect?
Oh, I can't wait. We have so many women that have submitted to speak at Atlanta, and that is due to Judy Goss and What Women Want in general, like what they have done with this conference. I gave a workshop last year about Messy Brilliance and really diving into that place in yourself. And I've been to a lot of conferences, Kristen, and I was so moved by the women at this conference because the theme to me was kindness, right? Mm-hmm. Willingness and connection. It was so beautiful to see women that weren't competitive, that were helping each other, supporting one another, and that wanted to learn, and that were professional women that really wanted to expand their knowledge in the personal way and the professional way. So, and I don't just say that lightly. I love this conference, and I think it's such a perfect place to do the Truthteller Tour because it brings that personal side in for women to speak their truth. We have over 30 already written submissions, and we're accepting them till September 1st. So we've got 10 in today. So, people wait till the last minute. And you could go to the site and submit your story if you want to speak at the Atlanta What Women Want conference, and you get a discount on the conference if you're selected to speak. But all people that submit will be we'll have their story professionally edited and posted on our site as well.
That's amazing. Well, Kelly, we're looking forward to having you at the conference. We're looking forward to the conference. We're looking forward to learning more about your other stops on the Truthteller Tour as well. Thank you so much for joining me. And go ahead. And ladies, check out
thank you
Women
so
for
much.
One.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And ladies, do check out Women for One and Kelly's site. And folks, join us next week for more inspiring conversations. And remember, subscribe to us on YouTube. Don't miss one show. Go to whatwomenwantradio.com for more. And see you next week. Have a great night.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss and Kristen West, only on LA Talk Radio.